Most financial mistakes don't feel dangerous. They feel responsible. That's what makes them so expensive. Nobody wakes up and says, "I'm going to sabotage my future today." Instead, they make decisions that look smart. Stable job, reliable income, predictable payments, safe investments. And for years, everything seems fine. Until one day they realize they're working harder than ever, and somehow have less freedom than they expected. The strange part, many of those decisions were praised by everyone around them. Friends approved, family approved, society approved. But approval and wealth are not the same thing. In this video, we're breaking down 10 financial decisions that feel safe in the moment, but quietly age poorly over time, not because they're evil, not because they're always wrong, but because the world changes, and what once protected you can eventually become the thing holding you back. Section 1. Choosing comfort over options. Most people think financial safety comes from certainty, a predictable paycheck, a familiar routine, a stable path. Sounds reasonable, but here's the problem. Certainty often comes at the cost of options. Imagine two people. One spends years building a single career. The other spends years building skills. At first, the first person feels safer. Everything is predictable. But eventually something changes. Technology changes. Industries change. Markets change. Now the person who depended on one path has a problem. The person who built multiple capabilities has choices. And wealth often follows choices, not certainty. The hidden danger isn't losing a job. It's becoming dependent on one source of security, because dependence always feels safe until it isn't. And that leads to something even more common. Section 2. Optimizing for income instead of ownership. Most people spend decades improving income. Very few spend decades improving ownership. The difference matters a lot. Income pays bills. Ownership builds leverage. Income requires effort. Ownership compounds effort. At first, this distinction seems small. Years later, it becomes enormous. Two people earn the same amount. One buys assets. The other continuously upgrades lifestyle. For a while, they appear identical. Then time enters the equation. One person's money begins working. The other person's expenses begin expanding. The scary part? The second person often looks more successful. Bigger house, better car, more visible rewards. But visibility isn't wealth. It's advertising. And many people spend decades advertising success instead of building it. Which brings us to a financial decision that almost nobody questions. Section 3. Staying loyal to outdated financial advice. Some advice survives because it's good. Some survives because it's familiar. Those are not the same thing. Every generation inherits rules. Work hard. Save money. Avoid risk. Stay consistent. Not bad advice, but incomplete advice. Because every era creates different opportunities. The world your parents prepared for may not be the world you're living in. The challenge isn't rejecting old wisdom, it's updating it. People often treat financial advice like religion, something permanent, something sacred, but money rewards adaptation, not nostalgia. And the cost of refusing to adapt isn't immediate. It's delayed, which makes it dangerous, because delayed consequences are easy to ignore. Until they aren't. Section 4. Using debt only to consume. Debt has a reputation. Most people see it as either good or bad. But reality is more uncomfortable. Debt is a tool. The question is what it's building. Many people borrow against tomorrow. To enjoy today. New car, new furniture, new lifestyle, temporary satisfaction, permanent obligation. The payment feels manageable at first, but every future payment quietly steals flexibility. Every obligation narrows choices. Every commitment reduces freedom. The issue isn't the monthly payment. It's what that payment prevents later. Because wealth is often the ability to act, and obligations slowly remove that ability. Now here's where this gets deeper. Because the next decision doesn't involve spending money at all. Section 5. Waiting for perfect certainty. People think caution protects them. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it delays them. There are people who spend years researching investments, years researching businesses, years researching opportunities, always preparing, never moving. They aren't avoiding mistakes. They're avoiding discomfort. And that's different. Because certainty is addictive. The more you wait for it, the more impossible action becomes. You tell yourself you're being responsible. Meanwhile, time keeps moving. And time is the one resource nobody gets back. Then eventually a painful realization appears. The opportunity wasn't lost because you chose wrong. It was lost because you never chose at all. And this is where the conversation shifts. Because what looks like money is becoming something else. You thought this was about money. It's not. It's about how you think. The decisions that age poorly aren't usually mathematical errors. They're psychological ones. They come from wanting certainty, wanting approval, wanting comfort, wanting protection. The financial outcome is just the visible result. The deeper problem is the mindset underneath, because every financial choice eventually becomes an identity choice, and that's where things become uncomfortable. Section 6. Building a life that requires high income. This sounds backwards. Most people dream about higher income, and they should. But there's a difference between earning more and needing more. One creates freedom, the other creates pressure. A person earning $80,000 while needing $40,000 has options. A person earning $250,000 while needing $240,000 has stress. The second person looks richer. The first person is often freer. That's a hard truth, because modern culture rewards appearance, not resilience. And when every dollar is already assigned a job, income stops feeling empowering. It starts feeling necessary. You're not building wealth, you're maintaining survival, just at a higher level. And the trap gets worse, because eventually people begin protecting the lifestyle itself. Section 7. Treating stability as a destination. Most people chase stability. Few ask what happens after they find it. That's important, because stability is valuable. But it was never meant to be permanent. A stable foundation should support growth, not replace it. The problem begins when comfort becomes the goal. Then growth slows, curiosity fades, adaptation stops, and stagnation quietly takes over. Nothing feels wrong. That's why it's dangerous. There is no alarm, no crisis, just gradual irrelevance, year after year, until someone realizes the world moved faster than they did. And then catching up becomes expensive, which brings us to one of the most respected financial habits of all. Section 8. Saving without a purpose. Saving money sounds unquestionably smart, because often it is. But money sitting still for decades isn't a strategy. It's a parking spot. The goal was never to accumulate numbers. The goal was freedom, opportunity, flexibility, security. A pile of money without direction eventually becomes fear disguised as discipline. People tell themselves they're being cautious. In reality, they may be postponing decisions, avoiding uncertainty, avoiding responsibility. Money is a tool, not a trophy, and tools create value only when used. But the deepest financial mistake isn't about saving, or spending, or investing. It's about identity. Section 9. Letting other people define success. This decision quietly affects almost every other one, because people rarely buy what they want. They buy what signals success. Different neighborhood, different car, different lifestyle, different image. The scary part? Most of these purchases aren't financial decisions. They're social decisions. The money simply follows. People spend decades chasing a finish line they didn't create. And because the goal isn't theirs, reaching it never feels satisfying. There is always another upgrade, another comparison, another benchmark. The target keeps moving, and so does peace of mind, which leads directly to the final decision, the one hiding underneath all the others. Section 10. Confusing safety with freedom. This is the decision that ages the worst, because it sounds the smartest. Most people think safety means eliminating risk. But life doesn't work that way. Eliminate one risk, and you often create another. Avoid career risk, create dependency risk. Avoid investment risk, create inflation risk. Avoid change, create obsolescence. The pursuit of total safety creates its own danger, because the future belongs to people who can adapt, not people who can hide. And that's the realization most people discover too late. The safest path often becomes the most restrictive path, not immediately, slowly, quietly, over decades, until the person realizes they protected themselves from uncertainty, while accidentally protecting themselves from opportunity too. Most financial decisions don't fail because they're bad. They fail because people keep using them long after circumstances change. What feels safe today can become expensive tomorrow. What feels stable today can become limiting tomorrow. And the biggest financial risk isn't usually making the wrong move. It's assuming the current move will stay right forever. Because wealth has never been about predicting the future perfectly. It's about remaining flexible enough to respond when the future changes. But even that isn't the biggest trap, because some decisions don't just limit your options. They quietly drain your wealth while making you look successful. And that's exactly what we'll uncover next. Top 10 status symbols that quietly destroy wealth. Because the things people admire most are often the things costing them the most.